I want to bring in Richard Haass, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations and Senior Counselor at Centerview Partners. Let me ask you first off, because that's where the Vice President is, about Greenland. I was talking just a short time ago, Richard, to Ambassador Bolton, and he said nobody is disputing the fact of the importance in terms of our national security, global security of Greenland and investing in Greenland. But if you want to get to, and I'm using the word that Vice President Vance just used, to a partnership, if you want to get to the place where you can actually advance that security, the way to do it is not to go after the person that the country that is intimately involved in this. I wonder what you think about what you just heard from Vice President Vance.
Chris, this may be a rare moment that John Bolton and I are in agreement. I think he's exactly right. Look, there's a strong case for the United States having deeper, broader security and economic ties to Greenland. But if that was our goal, there's this old-fashioned thing called diplomacy. And you use your diplomats or you send envoys and you talk about it because it's in the interests of both the people of Greenland as well as Denmark, as well as the United States. So, I think what the Vice President was doing today was a little bit of damage control, better late than never. But again, all of this is possible, was possible. There was no reason for this country, for the Trump administration to come on so heavy-handed. We created a problem when none was there. Now we have to basically walk it back. And I'm hopeful that we can get there, but we certainly made it far, far more difficult to get to where we want to go.
I mean, the other thing he said is that we respect the self-determination of Greenland. What he's looking for and what the U.S. is looking for is the leadership of Denmark. But do you see them making friends with Greenland? He said nice things about the people of Greenland. He said some nice things about the island itself. But it doesn't seem like he's gotten any place, whether it's J.D. Vance, again. It was made clear that there was not an invitation put forward. They went anyway. And it's their right? If there's a U.S. base there, he went to visit the U.S. base. But was that just adding to the anti-diplomacy method that clearly this administration is deciding that is the way to go? Be tough. Talk tough.
They do talk tough. There is an aggressive quality, particularly in this hemisphere. We see it with Canada. We see it with Mexico. We see it with Panama. We see it in the case of Greenland. It's counterproductive. It triggers nationalist reactions in other places, anti-American reactions. Again, it's the kind of thing your mother taught you. It's easier to get things with honey rather than vinegar. So use some honey. And again, what we want is ultimately, I would like to think, in the interest of Greenland, Denmark, and the United States. We're not there to exploit them. We're not there. This is not an imperialist foreign policy. What it ought to be is basically saying, yes, there are emerging threats. There are emerging concerns, particularly in the security sphere. Let's sit down and talk about how we can meet them together. That ought to be the conversation. Again, we've created a problem where one didn't exist, and I'm hoping that maybe what we just heard, Chris, is the beginning of the process of getting to where we ought to have been from the get-go.
If I can ask you to stand by, Richard, I want to talk about the second major story that obviously was addressed by Vice President Vance, and that is the controversy over the Signal chat that was done, included a journalist from Atlantic. And let me go for more on that to NBC's Vaughn Hilliard. And what Vice President Vance wanted to talk about was, first of all, attacking the media. What I saw, he says, was sometimes we all agree and disagree. We had an honest conversation. Nobody is suggesting that within an administration, within a national security team, there should not be conversations about big decisions that are being made. That was not the question at hand. Talk to me about where the administration is right now on this controversy that won't go away, no matter how much they want to point the finger at what they see as an American media obsessed with the story.
Right. And you saw it in the frustration upon the question being asked of him saying, we have heard now several responses when it comes to Greenland specifically. Now I want to ask you about what J.D. Vance referred to as Signalgate. And that is where you saw him articulate that the mission that they were discussing on Signal went as executed. And this, for this administration, is, at this point, it's not a defense necessarily, but it's the best pivot you can make, understanding that even Republicans on Capitol Hill are calling out the administration and suggesting inquiries and a better understanding of how confidential and classified information is shared among top cabinet officials is executed upon. And I think that that is where you saw here Michael Waltz, a national security advisor who was announced to be going on this trip before the story in the Atlantic broke the other day. He still went on this trip showing solidarity and standing behind the national security advisor. But this is an administration in which you have watched these top cabinet officials now 2 months in effectively, for the most part, stand in solidarity with one another. There were serious questions about what the second Trump administration and how their cabinet officials would handle these tense circumstances. And this particularly has been one in which it has been very clear cut that there were indiscretions and there were missteps that were made in the handling of this sensitive material.
Let me go now to retired Air Force fighter pilot Major Anthony Bork. Major, thank you so much for being with us. And I know you've been waiting while we were listening to what was being said by the Vice President of the United States. There are a number of people who have been expressing concern within the military community about exactly what happened and whether or not that, in fact, put lives at danger, particularly possibly pilots' lives at danger. I wonder what your first reaction was when you heard that, first of all, this chat was being done on a commercial, unsecured chat, and also that a journalist was a part of it.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I was interviewed by the New York Times yesterday on this exact subject. And since that time, I've had at least 10 military friends, former military friends, who reached out and said, my gosh, you know, had I done something like that when I was flying F-18s or flying F-16s or serving in the Special Forces, not only would I have ended up in jail, I would have been stripped of my rank, probably kicked out of the military. So the idea to most of us who have served in the military of, you know, talking about classified information on non-secure channels and risking the lives or the safety of our men and women in uniform who are out there on the pointy end of the spear is really surprising to me, and I think surprising to almost everyone that's worn the uniform.
Is there any doubt in your mind that what you read in what has been published, and which has been, in fact, affirmed by officials in the Trump administration, was indeed classified information? And do you believe the Signal chat could have put the lives of service members in danger?
You know, I am not a IT or cybersecurity expert. I know a couple things. One, I can download Signal today for free on the internet. And while I think it's probably fairly secure, I think our adversaries have developed some very effective means for hacking into different systems. I also think when you're talking about using personal cell phones, we know for a fact that there's technology out there that can hack your cell phone without you clicking on a link, and can, you know, read everything you write, can hear everything you say, can use your camera. And so, you know, I know that the military and the government have some very effective, secure ways of communicating. And I don't know anyone in the military that wouldn't use those when discussing battle plans. And, you know, I was thinking about how fortunate would we have been if the terrorists on 9/11 had been texting a chat on Signal or something else on their personal cell phones. You know, even an hour's notice could have saved thousands of lives in our country. Yes, I think there are secure ways to communicate and not, and that's very clear to anyone that served in the military.
We just saw the Vances leave, and one of the messages from this administration has been, well, nothing bad happened, so the worst case scenario didn't come to pass. But I wonder what you think should happen now. What does accountability look like here? What does accountability look like, given your experience in the military?
Yeah, that's hard for me to say. I think the military has their own channels for handling this, and I hope the government does too. And you know, the other thing that I take away is mistakes are made. They're made every day, and for most of us, at least in my background as a fighter pilot and a military officer, when mistakes are made, we admit them and we learn from them, and we keep getting better. And I hope that happens both in our current administration and in our security systems.
Retired Air Force fighter pilot Major Anthony Bork, thank you for your service, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us.